Close your eyes now and let yourself drift backward through time. Feel the present moment falling away like sand slipping through your fingers. We are traveling together, you and I, moving through centuries and millennia, past wars and kingdoms, past the rise and fall of empires, until we arrive at a place where the world was young and the stars seemed closer to the earth. We are going to ancient Egypt, to the land of the Nile, where civilization bloomed like a lotus flower on the water. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a great river. The air is warm against your skin, carrying the scent of wet earth and papyrus reeds. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of copper and gold, and the Nile flows beside you, eternal and slow, just as it has flowed for thousands upon thousands of years. This is the river that gave birth to one of the greatest civilizations humanity has ever known. This is where our journey begins. Let your breathing slow. Let your body relax. As we walk together through ancient Egypt, you will see the world through different eyes. You will become the people who lived along this river, who built temples that touched the sky, who wrote in pictures on papyrus scrolls, who believed the gods walked among them. Their stories will become your dreams tonight. The Nile is everything. Let this truth settle into your mind like silt settling at the bottom of the river. Without the Nile, there is only desert, endless, burning, lifeless sand stretching to the horizon in every direction. But where the Nile flows, there is life. Where the Nile floods, there is abundance. Picture yourself as a farmer living 3,500 years before the time of Christ. You wake before dawn in your small mud brick house, and the first thing you do is step outside to look at the river. The air is cool now in these early morning hours, and a mist rises from the water like the breath of gods. You can hear the gentle lapping of waves against the riverbank, the calls of ibis birds in the reeds, the distant voices of other farmers waking to greet the day. It is summer now, the season the ancient Egyptians call Akhet, the time of inundation. You have been watching the river for weeks, and you know what is coming. Far to the south, in lands beyond the cataracts, in the mysterious regions where the Nile is born, the rains have fallen. The great river is rising, swelling with water and the rich black soil it carries from the heart of Africa. You walk down to the water's edge, your bare feet pressing into the damp earth. The river is higher today than it was yesterday. Soon it will overflow its banks. Soon it will spread across the fields like a blessing from the gods, covering the land with water that will soak into the soil and leave behind the precious black silt that makes Egypt fertile. Your neighbors are there too, standing along the riverbank in the gentle morning light. You greet them quietly, exchanging knowing looks. Everyone understands that this annual miracle is the source of all life in Egypt. The Greek historian Herodotus, who will visit this land many centuries from now, will call Egypt the gift of the Nile. And he will be right. Without this yearly flood, there would be no crops, no food, no cities, no pharaohs, no pyramids, no civilization at all. As the sun rises higher, you return to your home. Your wife is grinding grain between two stones, the rhythmic sound filling your small dwelling with its steady music. Your children are still sleeping on their reed mats, their faces peaceful in the golden light filtering through the doorway. You sit down to break your fast with bread and beer, the staples of every Egyptian meal, rich and poor alike. The bread is made from emmer wheat, dark and dense and slightly sweet. Your wife baked it yesterday in the outdoor oven, shaping the dough with her practiced hands. The beer is thick and nourishing, made from barley that was partially baked into loaves, then crumbled and left to ferment in water. It is not like the beer of modern times. It is cloudier, sweeter, less intoxicating, more like liquid bread. You drink it through a reed straw to filter out the grain particles, and it fills your belly with warmth. As you eat, you can hear the village coming to life around you. The sound of grinding stones, of children laughing, of someone singing as they work. You hear the bleating of goats and the braying of donkeys. You hear the splash of water as someone fills their jar from the river. These are the sounds of Egypt, timeless and familiar, the sounds that have filled the morning air for generations beyond counting. Let us walk together now through the landscape of ancient Egypt and see how the people understood their world. To the Egyptians, there were only two lands, Kemet and Deshret, the Black Land and the Red Land. Kemet is the narrow ribbon of dark, fertile soil that lines both banks of the Nile. This is the Black Land, named for the rich black silt that the annual flood deposits on the fields. This is where you plant your crops, wheat and barley, lentils and chickpeas, onions and garlic and lettuce. This is where the date palms grow tall, heavy with sweet fruit. This is where the papyrus reeds sway in the breeze, where the lotus flowers bloom on the water, where the cattle graze in green pastures. The Black Land is life. It is civilization. It is everything that makes Egypt Egypt. But beyond the reach of the floodwaters, the desert begins. This is Deshret, the red land, named for the color of the sand that stretches away to nothingness. The desert is death, chaos, the realm of Set, the god of storms and disorder. It is where wild animals roam, where the sun beats down mercilessly, where a person can walk for days without seeing any living thing. And yet, the desert is not only a threat, it is also a gift, a protector. To the east and west of the Nile Valley, the vast deserts form natural barriers that shield Egypt from invaders. While other ancient civilizations must constantly defend themselves against hostile neighbors, Egypt remains relatively isolated, protected by the red land that surrounds the black land like a fortress wall. Picture yourself now standing on the boundary between these two worlds. You are at the edge of the cultivated fields, where the green suddenly stops and the desert begins. One step, and you are in the realm of life and abundance. Another step, and you are in the realm of death and emptiness. The contrast is absolute, startling, miraculous. You reach down and scoop up a handful of the black soil. It is damp, rich, almost oily in its fertility. You can feel the life in it, the potential for growth. Then you take a step into the desert and pick up a handful of red sand. It is dry, hot, lifeless, running through your fingers like time itself. These two handfuls tell you everything you need to know about Egypt. That it is a narrow miracle of abundance surrounded by desolation. That the difference between prosperity and starvation is measured in mere feet. That the Nile and its flood are the only things standing between your people and extinction. This understanding shapes everything about how the ancient Egyptians see their world. It is why they are so grateful to the gods who control the flood. It is why they are so careful to maintain Ma'at, the cosmic order and balance that keeps the world functioning properly. It is why they build their temples and tombs in the desert, reserving the precious black land for the living and for agriculture, while using the eternal red land for the eternal dead. Let the rhythm of the Egyptian year flow through your mind now, like the river flows through the valley. The ancient Egyptians divided their year into 3 seasons, each lasting 4 months, and each season shaped by the behavior of the Nile. First comes Akhet, the inundation, which begins in June and lasts through September. This is the time we are in now, watching the river rise day by day. The flood waters spread across the fields, transforming the entire valley into a vast, shallow lake. From a distance, it looks as if the villages and towns are islands rising from a sea of muddy water. During Akhet, there is little work to be done in the fields. The land is underwater. And so, this is when the pharaoh calls upon farmers to come and work on his great building projects. You and your neighbors will travel north, walking for days along the river, to wherever the king is building his pyramid or temple. You will join thousands of other men, hauling massive blocks of limestone from the quarries, dragging them on wooden sledges, pulling them up great ramps of mud brick. But do not imagine this as slavery or cruel oppression. You go willingly, even proudly. Working on the king's monument is a form of tax, yes, but it is also a sacred duty, a way of serving the gods and ensuring that Ma'at continues. The pharaoh is not just a king. He is a living god, the son of Ra, the intermediary between the human world and the divine realm. By building his eternal resting place, you are helping to maintain the cosmic order itself. You are fed well during this work, given bread and beer and onions, and you know that when you die, your service will be remembered and rewarded in the afterlife. The second season is Pare, the emergence, which runs from October through January. This is when the flood waters recede and the land emerges from beneath the water, like creation emerging from the primordial ocean of Nun. The fields are covered in fresh, moist, black silt, a clean slate ready for planting. Imagine yourself returning home from the pharaoh's building project. You are tired from the months of labor, your hands calloused, your back aching, but your heart is light because you know it is time to plant. You arrive at your village to find the water gone and the fields ready. Your wife and children greet you with joy. That evening, you all walk out to your plot of land and look at the fresh soil, making plans for the planting. The next morning, at first light, you begin. You have seeds saved from last year's harvest, emmer wheat and barley primarily, but also some flax that your wife will spin into linen. You scatter the seeds across the damp earth with practiced movements, your arm swinging in a steady rhythm, while your eldest son follows behind with a herd of goats and sheep. The animals walk across the seeded field, their hooves pressing the seeds into the soil, covering them naturally. As you work, you sing. Everyone sings during planting time, old songs that your father taught you, that his father taught him, songs that go back so far that no one remembers who first sang them. The songs are about the Nile, about the gods, about the joy of planting and the hope of harvest. Your voice blends with the voices of your neighbors in the adjacent fields, creating a chorus that rises up into the clear blue sky. The weeks pass. The seeds sprout. Green shoots appear, growing taller day by day. You irrigate the fields carefully using wooden sheduf, long poles with counterweights that make it easier to lift water from the canals and pour it onto the crops. The work is constant, but not overwhelming. You have time to repair your house, to make new tools, to sit in the evening and watch the sun set over the desert hills while your children play. The third season is Shemu, the harvest, running from February through May. This is the busiest time of the year, when every hand is needed and every hour of daylight is precious. The crops must be harvested before the summer heat becomes too intense and before the next inundation begins. Picture yourself now in the golden fields, a sickle in your hand, a curved blade of wood with flint teeth set into it. The wheat is chest high and heavy with grain, rustling in the gentle breeze. The sun is already hot, though it is still early morning, and you know it will become punishing by midday. But there is no time to waste. You bend to your work, cutting the stalks of wheat with smooth, practiced strokes. Your arms move automatically, the motion so familiar that you barely need to think about it. Behind you, your wife and children gather the cut stalks and tie them into sheaves. Other families work nearby, and the field is filled with the sound of sickles cutting grain, of voices calling to one another, of children laughing as they chase mice fleeing from the harvest. By midday, when the heat is most intense, you rest in the shade of a date palm. Someone passes around a jar of water, and you drink deeply. Your wife produces bread and dried fish, and you eat together, too tired to talk much, but content. After a brief rest, you return to the work. The harvest waits for no one. When the wheat is cut, it must be threshed. The grain must be separated from the chaff. You bring your donkeys and oxen into the field, driving them in circles over the piles of wheat, their hooves trampling and crushing the stalks until the grain breaks free. Then comes the winnowing, tossing the threshed wheat into the air with wooden scoops so that the wind carries away the light chaff while the heavy grain falls back down. Finally, the grain must be measured and recorded. Officials from the pharaoh's administration arrive with ropes knotted at regular intervals, which they use to measure your fields, and with standard baskets, which they use to measure your harvest. Scribes write everything down on papyrus scrolls, their reed pens scratching across the smooth surface, recording in hieroglyphs how much grain you have produced. A portion will be taken as tax to feed the pharaoh's court, to provision his armies, to pay the priests and craftsmen and workers throughout Egypt. You watch the officials take away several baskets of your grain, loaded onto donkeys that will carry it to the nearest storehouse. You feel a mix of pride and resignation. Pride because your harvest was good this year, because you have fulfilled your duty to the king and to the gods. Resignation because you would have liked to keep more for yourself. But this is the way of things, the way it has always been, and you accept it as part of Ma'at, the natural order of the world. Let us walk now into a city and see what life is like beyond the fields. Picture yourself approaching Memphis, the great capital of Egypt during the Old Kingdom, built where the Nile Delta begins, at the junction between Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. From a distance, you see the city rising from the flat landscape, a sprawl of whitewashed buildings gleaming in the sun, temple pylons towering above the houses, the smoke from thousands of cooking fires hanging in the air like a veil. As you come closer, you begin to hear the city, the roar of voices, the sounds of commerce, the clatter of workshops, the braying of donkeys, the chanting of priests. You pass through the city gates as the sun climbs toward noon. The streets are narrow, shaded by the buildings on either side, and crowded with people. Vendors call out, advertising their wares. Children dart between the adults, playing some game that involves a lot of shouting and laughter. A man drives a herd of goats through the street, and everyone presses against the walls to let them pass. The smell of the city is overwhelming at first, a mixture of bread baking, beer fermenting, fish drying, incense burning, human sweat, animal dung, mud brick warming in the sun. But you adjust quickly, and soon you barely notice it. You make your way to the market district, where merchants have set up their stalls in an open plaza. There is no money in ancient Egypt. Not yet. Not for many centuries still. All trade is done through barter, through exchange, through negotiation. You have brought a basket of onions from your fields, and you hope to trade them for some new sandals, as your old ones are wearing through. You approach a craftsman who has several pairs of sandals displayed on a reed mat. They are made from woven papyrus, simple but sturdy. You begin to negotiate, pointing to the sandals you want, showing him your onions. He examines them, looks skeptical, quotes a price that is far too high. You counter with a lower offer. He shakes his head, but he is smiling now, enjoying the game of bargaining. Back and forth you go, until finally you reach an agreement. He takes your onions and gives you the sandals, and both of you feel you have gotten a fair deal. As you continue through the market, you see the incredible variety of goods available in the capital. There are bolts of linen, from coarse cloth suitable for work clothes to fine, almost transparent linen that only the wealthy can afford. There are tools, copper knives and fish hooks, wooden hoes and sickles, stone grinding bowls. There are foods, dates and figs, honey and salt, dried fish and duck, jars of oil and wine. There are luxuries, turquoise from Sinai, ebony from Nubia, cedar wood from Lebanon, gold jewelry, faience beads that gleam blue-green like the waters of the Nile. You watch a scribe passing through the market, his writing kit tucked under his arm, a wooden palette with wells for red and black ink, a leather bag containing reed pens and rolls of papyrus. He walks with the confidence of someone who belongs to an elite profession, someone who has spent years learning the hundreds of hieroglyphic signs needed to read and write. You feel a pang of envy, knowing that your children will probably be farmers like you, that they will never have the opportunity to attend a scribal school and learn the sacred signs. But then you remember that scribes must spend their days hunched over documents in stuffy offices, while you work in the open air under the sky, and you feel less envious. Near the edge of the market, you come upon a group of people gathered around a storyteller. You pause to listen. He is telling the tale of Osiris and Set, how the evil Set murdered his brother Osiris and scattered his body across Egypt, how Isis gathered the pieces and brought Osiris back to life, how Osiris became the lord of the underworld and judge of the dead. The storyteller is animated, acting out the parts, and his audience is rapt, even though they have surely heard this story many times before. These myths are the heart of Egyptian culture, constantly retold, constantly reimagined, shaping how people understand life, death, and the cosmos. As the afternoon wears on and the heat becomes intense, you decide to find some shade. You make your way toward the temple district, where the great temples of Memphis rise up, surrounded by high walls. You cannot enter the inner sanctums. Those are forbidden to all but priests and the pharaoh himself. But you can enter the outer courtyards, where ordinary people come to pray and make offerings. You enter the courtyard of a temple dedicated to Ptah, the creator god, patron of craftsmen. The courtyard is cool and peaceful, a refuge from the chaos of the streets. A few other people are here, kneeling before small shrines, leaving offerings of bread or flowers or small clay figurines. You kneel too, and you say a quiet prayer to Ptah, asking him to bless your fields and protect your family. You leave a small loaf of bread as an offering, placing it carefully on the altar. As you pray, you can smell the incense burning somewhere deep within the temple, and you can hear the faint sound of chanting, the priests performing their daily rituals, washing the god statue, dressing it in fine linen, offering it food and drink. These rituals happen 3 times a day. Every day, year after year, century after century, maintaining the connection between the human world and the divine realm, keeping Ma'at intact. You stay in the temple courtyard as the sun begins to sink toward the western desert. The light becomes golden, softer, more forgiving. You feel peaceful here, connected to something larger than yourself, part of an ancient tradition that stretches back to the beginning of time and will continue long after you are gone. Finally, as evening approaches, you leave the temple and begin the long walk back to your village. The streets are quieter now, the market mostly closed, people returning to their homes for the evening meal. You pass through the city gates and out into the farmland beyond, following the well-worn path along the river. The sun sets behind you, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The air cools. The evening star appears in the east, the planet Venus, which the Egyptians call the one who crosses, because it crosses the sky from one side to the other. You can hear frogs singing in the reeds, and somewhere a nightjar calls out its strange, rhythmic cry. You arrive home as darkness falls. Your wife has kept a lamp burning, a simple clay bowl filled with oil, with a wick of twisted linen. In its flickering light, you eat your evening meal together. Bread and beer, some boiled lentils, a few onions. The food is simple but satisfying, and you eat with gratitude, knowing that not everyone in the world is so fortunate. After the meal, you sit outside your house for a while, looking up at the stars. The night sky is crowded with them, so many that it seems impossible to count them all. You know some of the constellations. The ancient Egyptians have their own names for them, their own stories about them. You can see the constellation you call the foreleg of Set, which people in other lands and other times will call Ursa Major, the Great Bear. You can see Orion, which you call Sa, and which you associate with Osiris. The stars seem close tonight and bright, and you feel small beneath their vastness, but you also feel connected to them because you know that the gods are up there somewhere, watching over Egypt, ensuring that the sun rises each morning and the Nile floods each year, and life continues as it should. Eventually, you grow tired. You enter your house, lie down on your reed mat, and close your eyes. The sounds of the night drift through the doorway, the river murmuring, a dog barking in the distance, someone singing softly in a nearby house. You feel yourself sinking into sleep, into dreams, into the peace that comes at the end of a long day. Let time flow now. Let the centuries pass like water flowing down the Nile. Ancient Egypt is not one static civilization, frozen in time. It is a living, changing culture that evolves over 3,000 years, as long a span of time as separates the modern world from the height of the Roman Empire. Imagine yourself standing on a hillside overlooking the Nile, watching as the centuries unfold before your eyes, like a great scroll being unrolled. You see the pre-dynastic period, when the people along the river were just beginning to form organized communities, learning to farm, creating the first towns. You see the gradual unification of these communities into two kingdoms: Upper Egypt in the south, following the river up to the first cataract, and Lower Egypt in the north, spreading out across the fertile delta where the Nile branches into multiple streams before emptying into the Mediterranean Sea. Then, around 3100 BCE, you see a momentous event: the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt into a single kingdom. The man who achieves this is Narmer, also called Menes, the first pharaoh of a unified Egypt. You see him wearing two crowns, the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt, symbolizing his rule over both lands. This is the beginning of the dynastic period, the beginning of what we now call ancient Egyptian civilization in its classic form. The early dynastic period unfolds before you, the first and second dynasties, when the fundamental structures of Egyptian government and religion are being established. You see the pharaohs building their tombs at Abydos and Saqqara, large rectangular structures made of mud brick, the precursors to the great pyramids that will come later. Then comes the Old Kingdom, spanning from about 2686 to 2181 BCE. And this is when Egypt reaches heights of achievement that will never quite be equaled again. This is the age of the Great Pyramids, the age when Egyptian art and architecture reach their first magnificent flowering. Picture yourself now during the Fourth Dynasty, watching as Pharaoh Khufu commands the building of the Great Pyramid at Giza. You see thousands of workers laboring on the vast structure, not slaves, as later peoples will wrongly believe, but free Egyptian citizens fulfilling their tax obligations, supplemented by skilled craftsmen and engineers who work year-round. You watch as massive blocks of limestone are quarried from the cliffs across the river, ferried across on boats during the flood season, then dragged on wooden sledges up great ramps of mud brick. You see the careful precision with which the blocks are cut and fitted together, so precisely that a knife blade cannot be inserted between them. You watch the pyramid grow taller year by year, rising toward the sky, until finally it stands complete. 481 feet high, the tallest human-made structure in the world, and destined to remain so for the next 3,800 years. The Great Pyramid is not just a tomb. It is a representation of the primordial mound that emerged from the waters of Nun at the beginning of creation. It is a stairway to heaven, a means for the dead pharaoh's soul to ascend to the sky and take its place among the stars. It is a statement of cosmic order, mathematical precision, and the power of a unified nation working together toward a common goal. But nothing lasts forever, not even the old kingdom. You see the central authority of the pharaohs gradually weakening. You see provincial governors becoming more powerful, more independent. You see the end of the 6th dynasty, and then Egypt fractures into chaos, the first intermediate period, when there is no strong central government, when rival dynasties rule different parts of Egypt, when the old order breaks down. This is a time of hunger and disorder, of civil war and suffering. The ancient texts speak of it with horror, of children crying for food, of the Nile failing to flood properly, of Ma'at being overthrown and chaos reigning. And yet, even in this dark time, Egyptian culture survives. The basic patterns of Egyptian life continue in the villages and towns. People still plant and harvest, still worship the gods, still tell the old stories. Eventually, order is restored. The Middle Kingdom emerges around 2055 BCE, when the rulers of Thebes in Upper Egypt reunify the country and establish the 11th dynasty. You watch as Egypt enters a new golden age, different in character from the old kingdom, but equally remarkable. The pharaohs of the Middle Kingdom are more accessible, more concerned with justice and welfare of common people. The art becomes more realistic, more emotionally expressive. Literature flourishes, tales and teachings, poems and prophecies. Picture yourself during the 12th dynasty, the height of the Middle Kingdom. The pharaohs have moved the capital back to Memphis, but Thebes remains important, and the god Amun is rising in prominence. You see massive building projects, temples and fortresses irrigation systems, and mining expeditions. You see Egypt expanding its trade networks, sending expeditions to Punt, probably in modern Somalia or Yemen, to bring back myrrh and frankincense, gold and ivory. This is also the age when Egypt's literature reaches perhaps its greatest heights. Stories like The Tale of Sinuhe are being composed, sophisticated narratives with complex characters and psychological depth. Wisdom texts like The Instructions of Amenemhat are being written, setting forth ideals of proper behavior and good governance. These works will be copied and recopied for centuries, becoming classics that every educated Egyptian knows. But again, the cycle turns. The Middle Kingdom weakens and fragments. The Second Intermediate Period begins around 1782 BCE. And this time, Egypt faces something new and terrifying: foreign invasion. A people from the east, whom the Egyptians call the Hyksos, rulers of foreign lands, infiltrate the Delta region and eventually establish their own dynasty, ruling Lower Egypt from the city of Avaris. For the Egyptians, this is shocking and shameful. Egypt has always been isolated, protected, superior. The idea that foreigners could rule part of Egypt is almost incomprehensible. And yet it happens, and it lasts for over a century. You watch as the Theban rulers in Upper Egypt slowly gather their strength, learning from their enemies, adopting new military technologies, particularly the horse-drawn chariot, which the Hyksos brought with them from Asia. Finally, around 1550 BCE, the Theban pharaoh Akhmostur drives the Hyksos out of Egypt, expelling them back into Asia, reunifying the country once more. This event marks the beginning of the new kingdom, and Egypt will never be quite the same. The new kingdom pharaohs are more militaristic, more outward-looking, more aggressive than their predecessors. Having been invaded once, they are determined never to let it happen again. They will transform Egypt from an isolated civilization into an empire. Let yourself drift now into the new kingdom, into the age when Egypt becomes a great imperial power, projecting its might far beyond the Nile Valley. This is the Egypt of the great warrior pharaohs, of Thutmose III and Ramesses II, of Hatshepsut, the female king, and Akhenaten, the heretic. Picture yourself during the 18th dynasty, watching as Pharaoh Thutmose III leads his armies into Asia. You see Egyptian soldiers, armed with bronze Khopesh swords and composite bows, marching through Palestine and Syria, pushing the boundaries of Egyptian control far to the north. Thutmose III will fight 17 campaigns in Asia, expanding Egypt's empire until it stretches from the fourth cataract of the Nile in the south all the way to the Euphrates River in the north. Why this sudden expansion? Partly, it is defensive. The Egyptians are determined to create buffer zones between Egypt and potential invaders. Partly, it is economic. The lands of Asia are rich in resources that Egypt lacks, particularly wood and metals. And partly, it is ideological. The pharaoh must demonstrate ma'at by extending order and civilization to the chaotic lands beyond Egypt's borders. You watch as tribute flows into Egypt from conquered lands, gold from Nubia, silver from Asia, cedar from Lebanon, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. You see foreign princes coming to the Egyptian court, their children sent to be raised in Egypt as hostages/guests, ensuring their father's loyalty. You see Egyptian officials administering the empire, Egyptian garrisons stationed in fortresses throughout the conquered territories, Egyptian scribes recording everything in meticulous detail. The wealth of empire transforms Egypt. The temples grow larger and more magnificent. The priests become wealthier and more powerful. The pharaohs build vast mortuary temples on the west bank at Thebes, and they cut elaborate tombs for themselves into the cliffs of the Valley of the Kings, hidden away where tomb robbers, hopefully, cannot find them. Let us walk now into one of these royal tombs. Imagine you are a craftsman, one of the skilled workers who live in the village of Deir el-Medina, and your job is to excavate and decorate the tombs of the pharaohs. You wake before dawn in your stone house in the village, eat a quick meal, then hike over the mountain ridge with your fellow workers to the Valley of the Kings. The valley is desolate, baking hot, surrounded by cliffs that glow golden in the morning sun. You descend into the tomb that is currently under construction, the tomb of Pharaoh Seti I, one of the most elaborate ever created. You light your lamp, a clay bowl filled with oil, the same kind used in every Egyptian home, and you make your way down into the cool darkness of the underground chambers. The tomb is a marvel of engineering and art. Corridor after corridor, chamber after chamber, all cut into the solid rock with copper chisels and wooden mallets, then smoothed and plastered and covered with paintings and hieroglyphs. The walls are alive with scenes from the Book of the Dead, the Book of Gates, the Book of Caverns, sacred texts that will guide the pharaoh's soul through the underworld and help him achieve resurrection in the afterlife. You are a painter, and your task today is to work on a scene showing the pharaoh making offerings to Osiris. You have already sketched the scene in red ink, and a senior artist has corrected your sketch in black ink. Now you must paint it using the traditional colors: black from charcoal, white from gypsum, red and yellow from ochre, blue from crushed lapis, lazuli, or synthetic frit, green from malachite. You work carefully, precisely, following the ancient conventions. The figures must be depicted in the traditional way: head and legs in profile, torso facing front, the eye drawn frontally, even though the face is in profile. The pharaoh must be shown larger than other humans, because he is more important. The gods must be identifiable by their crowns and symbols. Everything must follow Ma'at, must conform to the proper order. As you paint, you think about the pharaoh who will someday lie in this tomb. You have seen Seti I from a distance during festivals when he appears before the people. He is a great warrior, a builder of temples, a maintainer of Ma'at. When he dies, his body will be mummified, preserved for eternity. It will be placed in a series of nested coffins, the innermost one made of solid gold. It will be surrounded by everything he needs for the afterlife: food and drink, clothes and jewelry, furniture and weapons, even small servant statues called ushabti that will magically come to life in the afterlife and perform any labor the pharaoh is called upon to do. And the paintings you are creating now, the hieroglyphs on the walls, the sacred texts, these are not mere decoration. They are magical, powerful, essential. By painting them, you are helping to ensure the pharaoh's resurrection and eternal life. You are serving Ma'at. You are fulfilling a sacred duty. But the new kingdom is not only about military expansion and monumental building. It is also a time of religious ferment, of questioning, of one of the strangest episodes in all of Egyptian history. Let yourself drift now to the reign of Amenhotep IV, who becomes pharaoh around 1353 BCE. At first, everything seems normal. He is crowned at Thebes. He marries a beautiful woman named Nefertiti, and he begins his reign in the traditional manner. But then something changes. Amenhotep IV becomes obsessed with a relatively minor solar deity called the Aten, the sun disk itself, the physical manifestation of the sun. He begins to elevate the Aten above all other gods. He builds new temples to the Aten, open-air temples where the sun can shine down directly on the altars, rather than the traditional dark, enclosed sanctuaries. And then he does something even more radical. He declares that the Aten is not merely the supreme God. It is the only God. All the other gods of Egypt are false. There is only the Aten, the sun disk, the giver of life. This is revolutionary, shocking, heretical. Egypt has always been polytheistic, worshipping hundreds of gods. The pharaoh has always been the son of Ra. And Amun-Ra, the king of the gods worshipped at Thebes, is one of the most powerful deities in the pantheon. But now, Amenhotep IV is saying that Amun does not exist, that Osiris and Isis and Ptah and all the others are nothing but empty names. He changes his own name from Amenhotep, Amun is satisfied, to Akhenaten, effective for the Aten. He abandons Thebes with its powerful priests of Amun and builds an entirely new capital city halfway between Thebes and Memphis. He calls it Akhetaten, horizon of the Aten, and today we call it Amarna. Picture yourself now at Akhetaten, in this strange new city built in the middle of nowhere. The city is beautiful, but unsettling. The art is different from traditional Egyptian art, more naturalistic, showing the royal family in intimate, informal poses, depicting Akhenaten with an elongated face and strange proportions. The temples are open to the sun, without the mystery and darkness of traditional temples. You watch as Akhenaten and Nefertiti worship the Aten together, their daughters around them. The king composes a hymn to his god, a beautiful poem praising the Aten as the creator of all life, the bringer of light and warmth. But there is something unsettling about this new religion. It is exclusive, where Egyptian religion has always been inclusive. It rejects centuries of tradition. It seems to deny the afterlife as ordinary Egyptians understand it. There is no Osiris, no judgment of the dead, no book of the dead to guide souls through the underworld. The priests of the old gods are hostile. The common people are confused and unhappy. The empire is neglected as Akhenaten focuses on his religious revolution. Letters arrive from vassals in Asia, begging for help against invaders, but Akhenaten pays little attention. The empire begins to crumble. And then Akhenaten dies, after ruling for 17 years. His religious revolution dies with him. His young son-in-law, a boy pharaoh named Tutankhaten, comes to the throne. The priests of Amun convince him to change his name to Tutankhamun and to abandon Akhetaten. The court returns to Thebes. The temples of Amun are restored. The old gods return. Egypt tries to erase Akhenaten from history. His name is chiseled out of inscriptions. His monuments are torn down. His city is abandoned and eventually crumbles into ruins. Later, pharaohs will refer to him not by name, but as that criminal of Akhetaten. But total erasure is impossible. The memory lingers. And thousands of years later, archaeologists will excavate Akhetaten and discover the Amarna letters, hundreds of diplomatic documents written in cuneiform script on clay tablets, revealing the international world of the late Bronze Age. They will study the art of the Amarna period, with its strange beauty. They will read Akhenaten's hymn to the Aten and wonder at this pharaoh who tried to change everything and failed. Let us step back now from the grand sweep of history and walk again among ordinary people, the farmers and craftsmen, the wives and children who made up the vast majority of the Egyptian population. Let us see how they lived their daily lives, what they believed, what they hoped for. Picture yourself as a woman in a village during the New Kingdom. You wake with the dawn, as you do every day. Your husband and older children are already stirring. Your youngest, a baby boy, is still sleeping beside you, and you let him rest a little longer while you begin your daily tasks. Your first task is to grind grain for bread. You kneel before the grinding stone, a large, flat stone with a smaller stone for grinding. You take handfuls of barley from the storage jar and place them on the flat stone. Then push the grinding stone back and forth, crushing the grain into flour. The sound is rhythmic, almost meditative, and your arms move automatically, the motion as familiar as breathing. This work is hard. It wears down the grinding stones, and tiny particles of stone mix with the flour. Over years of eating bread made from this flour, the grit wears down people's teeth, wearing them flat, sometimes wearing right through the enamel to the sensitive pulp beneath. By the time Egyptians reach middle age, dental problems are common and painful. But there is no other way to make flour. So you grind, just as your mother did, just as your grandmother did, just as women have done in Egypt for thousands of years. When you have enough flour, you mix it with water and a bit of dough saved from yesterday, which will make the bread rise slightly. You shape the dough into flat loaves and set them aside to rise while you prepare the fire in the outdoor oven, a dome-shaped structure made of mud brick. You feed the fire with dried palm fronds and bits of dried dung, watching as the flames catch and the oven grows hot. While you wait for the oven to heat, you nurse your baby, who has woken and is crying for you. You sit in the doorway of your house, the baby at your breast, and you watch the village coming to life. You see your neighbors emerging from their houses, hear the sounds of children, of animals, of people greeting each other. The sun is rising higher. The day is warming, and life continues as it always has. When the oven is hot enough, you place the loaves inside using a long wooden paddle. The bread bakes quickly in the intense heat, filling the air with its warm, yeasty smell. When it is done, you pull it out and set it aside to cool. Some of this bread will feed your family today. Some will be given to your husband to take with him to the fields. Some will be used to pay the carpenter who is making a new storage chest for your house. Your next task is laundry. You gather up the dirty linen garments, yours, your husband's, your children's, and walk down to the river. Other women are already there, kneeling at the water's edge, beating clothes against the rocks, scrubbing them with natron, a naturally occurring salt that acts as a cleanser. You kneel beside them, exchanging greetings and gossip while you work. The conversation flows around you. Talk of children and husbands, of harvests and festivals, of minor feuds and reconciliations, of dreams and their meanings. Someone mentions that her daughter is of marriageable age and asks if you know any suitable young men. Someone else talks about a healing charm she obtained from a priest, meant to protect against scorpions. The talk is comfortable, familiar, the same conversations women have been having by this river for generations. After the laundry is done, you return home to find your older daughter has started preparing the midday meal. She is boiling lentils in a clay pot over the cooking fire, and she has cut up some onions to add to them. You praise her work, and together you finish preparing the meal. Your husband and sons come home from the fields, hot and tired and hungry. You all sit together in the shade of your house, eating the lentils and bread, drinking beer from clay cups. The afternoon is the hottest part of the day. Everyone rests during these hours, dozing in the shade, too hot to work. You sit and spin flax into thread, a task that requires attention, but not much energy. Your fingers twist the fibers automatically, feeding them onto the spindle, creating thread that your daughter will later weave into linen on the small loom in the corner of your house. As you work, you think about your life. You are not wealthy, but neither are you poor. You have enough to eat, a solid house, a healthy family. Your husband is a good man who does not beat you, who provides for his children. Your oldest son is learning to farm from his father, and he will inherit your small plot of land when his father dies. Your daughters will marry and have their own families. This is what you hope for. Continuity, stability, the cycle of life, continuing as it should. You pray to the gods to protect your family, to keep the Nile flooding regularly, to maintain Mayat. You perform small rituals and wear protective amulets. You tell your children the old stories, passing on the traditions and beliefs that give life meaning. As the sun begins to sink lower, you start preparing the evening meal. More bread and beer, some dried fish, a few vegetables from your small garden. After eating, your family sits outside in the cooling air. Your husband plays a simple game with the younger children, using a board scratched into a flat stone and pebbles as pieces. Your daughter combs your hair, looking for lice, a constant problem in Egypt's warm climate, and you do the same for her. The stars come out, the same stars that have watched over Egypt since the beginning of time. You feel grateful for this day, for your family, for the simple blessings of life. Eventually, you all go inside and lie down on your mats. You hear your husband's breathing slow and deepen as he falls asleep. Your children are already dreaming. The baby stirs against you, makes a small sound, then settles. You close your eyes and drift toward sleep. And as you drift, you think about the journey every person must eventually make, the journey to the west, to the realm of the dead, to the judgment before Osiris. Let us walk now into that shadowy realm that the ancient Egyptians both feared and hoped for, the afterlife, the field of reeds, the kingdom of Osiris in the west. Picture yourself as someone who has just died. Your family is grieving, but they know what must be done. Your body must be preserved, transformed, prepared for the journey ahead. If you are wealthy, you can afford the best embalmers, the priests who have perfected the art of mummification over thousands of years. Your body is taken to the beautiful house, the place of embalming, usually located on the west bank of the Nile, the side associated with death and the setting sun. The embalmers lay your body on a stone table. They begin the process that will take 70 days to complete. First, they remove your internal organs, the liver, lungs, stomach, and intestines, which they wash and preserve separately in 4 special jars, the canopic jars, each protected by one of the 4 sons of Horus. Your heart, however, is left in place. The heart is the seat of intelligence and emotion, and you will need it in the afterlife. Your brain is removed through your nose using a long bronze hook. But the Egyptians do not consider the brain important, so it is simply discarded. Then your body is covered in natron, the same salt used for cleaning clothes, which will dry out your flesh over the next 40 days, preventing decay. While you wait in your shroud of natron, the embalmers are crafting the items you will need. They are making your canopic jars, painting them with protective spells. They are preparing the amulets that will be placed on your body, the heart scarab that will protect your heart during judgment, the Wedjat eye of Horus that will keep you safe, the Djed pillar that represents Osiris and resurrection. After 40 days, your body is removed from the natron. Your skin is now leather dry, preserved forever. The embalmers wash you carefully, then begin packing your body with linen, sawdust, and sweet-smelling resins to give you a more lifelike shape. They wrap you in hundreds of yards of linen bandages, carefully placing amulets between the layers, reciting spells of protection as they work. Each finger and toe is wrapped individually. Your arms are positioned across your chest or at your sides. A mask is placed over your face. If you are wealthy enough, it might be made of gold, like the famous mask of Tutankhamun. More layers of linen are wrapped around your entire body until you are completely encased, transformed into a mummy, ready for eternity. Your family has been preparing for your funeral during these 70 days. They have commissioned a coffin, or if they can afford it, multiple nested coffins, painted with images of gods and covered with hieroglyphic spells from the Book of the Dead. They have arranged for a tomb, either cut into rock or built of mud brick, depending on their wealth. They have collected the items you will need in the afterlife: furniture, clothes, food, drink, tools, even small wooden models of servants who will magically come to life and work for you. The day of your funeral arrives. Your mummy, enclosed in its coffin, is placed on a sledge pulled by oxen. Your family and professional mourners walk behind, wailing and throwing dust on their heads in the traditional displays of grief. The procession makes its way to your tomb on the west bank, carrying all your grave goods. At the entrance to your tomb, a crucial ritual is performed: the opening of the mouth ceremony. A priest dressed as Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming, touches your mummy's mouth with ritual instruments. This magical act restores to you your faculties, your ability to speak, to eat and drink, to breathe, to move. You are no longer truly dead. You are transformed, reborn as an ahiach, a transfigured spirit, ready to enter the afterlife. Your coffin is placed in your tomb. The grave goods are arranged around you. Priests recite the final prayers. Food offerings are left for you: bread and beer, roasted duck, cakes, fruit. Your family leaves reluctantly, looking back one last time. The entrance to your tomb is sealed. Now comes the journey. Your soul separates from your body, or rather your souls, for the Egyptians believe each person has multiple spiritual components. Your Ba, represented as a bird with a human head, flies free. Your Ka, your life force, remains close to your body. Your Ak is the transfigured spirit that can travel to the realm of the gods. Picture yourself now as this Ak, beginning the long journey through the underworld. It is dark here and dangerous. You are in the Duat, the realm between life and death, and it is filled with perils, monsters, demons, fire, darkness, locked gates guarded by fearsome deities. But you are not unprepared. The spells written on your coffin and on papyrus scrolls placed in your tomb. The spells from the Book of the Dead provide you with the knowledge you need. You know the names of the demons, and by knowing their names, you have power over them. You know the passwords to speak at each gate. You know how to transform yourself into different forms to escape danger, into a bird, a lotus flower, a god. You travel through the 12 hours of the night, following the path of the sun, God Ra, as he journeys through the underworld. You see Ra's solar boat sailing through rivers of darkness. You see him battling Apophis, the great serpent of chaos who tries each night to swallow the sun and end creation. You see him triumph, as he does every night, maintaining Ma'at even in the realm of death. Finally, you arrive at the Hall of Two Truths, where Osiris sits in judgment. This is the moment that will determine your fate for all eternity. The hall is vast and filled with 42 divine judges, one for each nome of Egypt. Osiris sits on his throne, wrapped in white linen like a mummy, holding the crook and flail of kingship, his green skin showing that he is both dead and alive, both king of the dead and symbol of resurrection. Beside him stand Isis and Nephthys, his wife and sister, protective and watchful. Anubis is here too, and Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and writing. You must stand before this assembly and make the negative confession. You must declare all the sins you have not committed. I have not killed. I have not stolen. I have not told lies. I have not been angry without just cause. I have not polluted the water. I have not driven cattle from their pasture. I have not caught fish with bait made of fish. I have not dammed flowing water. I have not extinguished a fire when it should burn. The list is long, 42 declarations, one for each judge. You speak the words you memorized from the scrolls in your tomb, hoping they are true, hoping you lived a good life according to Ma'at. Then comes the crucial test, the weighing of your heart. Anubis leads you to the great scales. He places your heart on one side. On the other side, he places a feather, the feather of Ma'at, representing truth, justice, order, balance. If your heart is light, if you lived according to Ma'at, the scales will balance. But if your heart is heavy with sin, weighed down by wrongdoing, the scales will tip. You watch, barely daring to hope, as the scales settle. Thoth records the result with his reed pen on papyrus. And if you are fortunate, if you lived well, the scales balance. Your heart is true. But there is a monster waiting beside the scales. Amit, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus. If your heart had been heavy with sin, Amit would have devoured it, and you would have ceased to exist, dying a second death from which there is no return. But your heart was light, and Amit turns away, and you are safe. Osiris speaks, his voice echoing through the hall. You are justified. You are Mea Keru, true of voice, vindicated, accepted. You may enter the field of reeds, the paradise that awaits the blessed dead. And what is this paradise? It is Egypt, but perfected. It is the Nile Valley, but more beautiful, more fertile, more abundant than the earthly version. Here the crops grow effortlessly, always ready for harvest. Here there is no hunger, no pain, no sorrow. Here you can be reunited with your loved ones who have gone before. Here you can serve Osiris in his court, or simply enjoy eternal peace. But even in paradise, there is work to be done, plowing and planting, reaping and threshing. This is why your family placed Ushabti figures in your tomb, hundreds of small servant statues. When you are called upon to work, you can simply speak the magic spell, and the Ushabti will come to life and do the labor for you, leaving you free to enjoy eternity. You walk through the field of reeds, and everything is as it should be. The sun rises and sets in perfect rhythm. The river flows clean and clear. The grain grows golden and heavy. Ma'at is perfectly maintained here, forever. This is what every Egyptian hopes for, works for, prays for. To pass the judgment of Osiris and enter this blessed realm where life continues, where death is defeated, where eternity is real. Let time flow forward again now. moving through the final centuries of ancient Egypt. The new kingdom eventually fades, weakened by invasions, civil wars, and economic troubles. The third intermediate period begins around 1070 BCE, when Egypt once again fragments into competing kingdoms and dynasties. Picture yourself during these troubled times. The great days of empire are over. Egypt no longer controls vast territories in Asia. Foreign powers are rising: the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians. Egypt struggles to maintain its independence, its identity, its ancient traditions. And yet, even in decline, Egyptian civilization remains remarkably resilient. The temples still function. The priests still perform their daily rituals. The farmers still plant and harvest along the Nile. The old ways continue because they are the only ways people know, because they have worked for thousands of years, because they are Ma'at. Then, in 525 BCE, Egypt falls to the Persian Empire. For the first time since the Hyksos, foreign rulers control all of Egypt. The Persians rule for over a century, and many Egyptians resent them as foreigners, as violators of Ma'at. But the Persians are pragmatic rulers. They allow Egyptian religion and culture to continue largely unchanged. They even have their kings portrayed as traditional Egyptian pharaohs, wearing the double crown, performing the proper rituals. In 332 BCE, a young Macedonian conqueror named Alexander the Great arrives in Egypt. He defeats the Persians, and the Egyptians welcome him as a liberator. Alexander makes sacrifices to the Egyptian gods. He travels to the Oracle of Amun at Siwa Oasis in the western desert, where the priests declare him the son of Amun, a legitimate pharaoh. He founds a new city on the Mediterranean coast, which he names after himself, Alexandria. Alexander dies young, and his general Ptolemy takes control of Egypt, founding the Ptolemaic dynasty. The Ptolemies are Greek, not Egyptian, but they adopt many Egyptian customs. They marry their sisters, as the pharaohs did. They have themselves depicted in traditional Egyptian style on temple walls. They build new temples and restore old ones, continuing the ancient traditions even as they introduce Greek culture and learning to Egypt. Picture yourself in Alexandria during the Ptolemaic period. This is now the greatest city in Egypt, perhaps the greatest city in the Mediterranean world. It is a cosmopolitan place where Greeks and Egyptians and Jews and people from all over the known world live and trade and exchange ideas. You walk through the streets, past the great lighthouse, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world that guides ships into the harbor. You pass the Museum and Library of Alexandria, where scholars from across the world come to study, where hundreds of thousands of scrolls are collected, where the sum of human knowledge is being preserved and expanded. But despite all this Greek influence, despite the new gods and new languages, ancient Egyptian culture persists. In the countryside, in the villages along the Nile, life continues much as it has for millennia. Farmers still plant and harvest according to the old rhythms. People still worship Isis and Osiris, still make offerings at the ancient temples, still tell the old stories to their children. The Ptolemaic dynasty lasts for 3 centuries, until the famous Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt. Picture her now, this brilliant, ambitious woman who speaks 9 languages, who schemes to preserve Egypt's independence in a world dominated by Rome. She allies herself with Julius Caesar, then with Mark Antony. But in the end, it is not enough. In 30 BCE, after Antony and Cleopatra are defeated by Octavian at the Battle of Actium, Cleopatra takes her own life, and Egypt becomes a province of the Roman Empire. This is the end of ancient Egypt as an independent civilization. After 3,000 years of continuity, of pharaohs and temples, and the worship of the old gods, Egypt passes into the hands of foreign rulers who have no interest in maintaining the ancient traditions. But even under Roman rule, Egyptian culture does not die immediately. The temples continue to function for several more centuries. The last hieroglyphic inscription is carved in 394 CE at the temple of Isis at Philae. The old gods are still worshipped, the old festivals still celebrated, even as Christianity spreads through Egypt and the old religion gradually fades away. And now, let us drift forward through time, one more time, moving past the centuries when Egypt slept, when the temples crumbled and the hieroglyphs fell silent, when sand covered the monuments and the world forgot how to read the ancient writing. Picture the long years when Egypt was nothing but mysterious ruins, silent witnesses to a vanished greatness. Then, in 1799, a French soldier in Napoleon's army discovers a black stone near the town of Rosetta. The Rosetta Stone, as it will be called, bears the same text written in 3 scripts: Ancient Greek, Demotic Egyptian, and Hieroglyphic Egyptian. This discovery will give scholars the key they need to finally decode hieroglyphs, to unlock the ancient language, to let the dead civilization speak again after 1,500 years of silence. Picture the excitement when Jean-François Champollion announces in 1822 that he has cracked the code, that he can read the hieroglyphs, that the ancient texts can be understood once more. Imagine the tombs being opened, the temples being excavated, the papyri being translated, the whole vast story of ancient Egypt emerging from the sand and from the silence. The modern world becomes fascinated with ancient Egypt. Mummies are unwrapped in public performances. Obelisks are transported to London and Paris and New York. Egyptian motifs appear in art and architecture. The discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922, with all its golden treasures intact, creates a global sensation. And what do we find when we look at ancient Egypt with modern eyes? We find a civilization of remarkable sophistication and longevity, a culture that lasted longer than any other in human history. A people who achieved wonders of engineering and art, while most of the world was still living in scattered villages. We find the pyramids still standing after 4,500 years, still inspiring awe. We find the temples, Karnak and Luxor, Abu Simbel and Dendera, massive and magnificent, covered with hieroglyphs that now we can read. We find the tombs in the Valley of the Kings, with their vivid paintings still bright after 3 millennia in the dark. We find the mummies, preserved by the dry desert air, faces still recognizable after thousands of years. But more than monuments and mummies, we find people. We find their letters and their stories, their prayers and their poems. We find the autobiography of Senuhe, the wisdom teachings of Ptahhotep, the love songs between young couples, the workmen's complaints about their overseer, the doctor's prescriptions, the spell to ward off crocodiles, the recipe for eye makeup, the student's essay complaining about how hard it is to be a scribe. We find humanity, people who loved and feared and hoped and dreamed, who worried about their children and their crops, who believed in ghouls and demons, who tried to live good lives according to Ma'at, who prepared for death because they believed death was not the end. Close your eyes now, one last time, and let yourself sink deeper into rest. You have walked with me through ancient Egypt, through 3,000 years of history, through the daily lives of farmers and the grand projects of pharaohs, through the mysteries of temples and the journey to the afterlife. Picture yourself one final time standing beside the Nile at sunset, watching the eternal river flow past. The sun is setting into the western desert, painting the sky in those same copper and gold tones you saw at the beginning of our journey. The air is warm and filled with the scent of the river, and somewhere nearby you can hear someone singing an ancient song. You think about everything you have seen. The farmers planting their fields after the flood, the workers building the pyramids, the priests performing their rituals in the darkness of the temples, the embalmers preparing bodies for eternity, the souls being judged in the hall of two truths. You think about the endless cycle of life and death, of flood and harvest, of the sun rising and setting, the rhythm that sustained Egypt for 3,000 years. And you realize that ancient Egypt is not really gone. It lives on in the monuments that still stand, in the artifacts preserved in museums around the world, in the hieroglyphs that we can now read, in the stories that we can now understand. It lives on in our imagination, in our fascination, in our wonder at what human beings can achieve when they work together toward a common goal, when they believe in something greater than themselves. The sun touches the horizon now, a perfect disk of gold sinking into the desert. The sky darkens from gold to orange to purple to deep blue. The first stars appear, the same stars that the ancient Egyptians saw, the same stars that guided them in their understanding of time and eternity. Let yourself relax completely now. Let your breathing slow. Let your muscles release all their tension. You are safe here, beside the eternal Nile, at the end of our long journey through time. The river flows on, patient and unchanging, just as it has flowed for millions of years, just as it will continue to flow long after we are gone. The ancient Egyptians believed that every night the sun god Ra dies and travels through the underworld, and every morning he is reborn, rising again in the east, victorious over death and darkness. They believed that this cycle of death and rebirth is the fundamental pattern of existence, that what dies will rise again, that endings are also beginnings. As you drift now toward sleep, toward dreams, let yourself follow that ancient pattern. Let the day that has passed fall away, like the sun falling below the horizon. Let your conscious mind rest, descending into the peaceful darkness, like Ra descending into the underworld. Trust that you, too, will rise again, that morning will come, that the eternal cycle will continue. The river whispers beside you. The stars shine above you. The desert stretches away into infinity on both sides, protective and eternal. And somewhere, in the depths of the earth, in tombs that have been sealed for thousands of years, The ancient Egyptians sleep their endless sleep, waiting in the darkness, their hearts preserved, their names written in hieroglyphs, their stories ready to be told to anyone who will listen. You have listened tonight. You have walked with them through their world. You have seen their lives, their beliefs, their hopes and fears. And now it is time for you to rest too, to let their stories blend into your dreams, to carry their ancient wisdom with you into sleep. The last light fades from the western sky. The stars grow brighter. The Nile flows on, timeless and patient, the giver of life, the heart of Egypt, the reason for everything. Let the sound of the water carry you away now. Let it flow through your mind like time itself, washing away all thought, all concern, all wakefulness. Sleep now. Dream of Egypt. Dream of pyramids rising toward the sky, of temples filled with incense smoke, of fields green with wheat, of the sun rising over the desert, golden and warm and eternal. Dream of the ancient river flowing through the land, bringing life, bringing abundance, bringing the gift that made civilization possible. Dream of 3,000 years of human history, of countless lives lived and ended, of children born and elders dying, of love and work and worship and hope. Dream of Ma'at, the cosmic balance, the order that holds the universe together. Dream of the weighing of the heart, of passing through judgment, of entering the field of reeds, where the blessed dead live forever in peace. Dream and sleep and rest, here beside the eternal Nile, at the heart of the most enduring civilization humanity has ever known. The river flows on. The stars wheel overhead. The desert keeps its silent watch. And you float peacefully through it all, carried on the current of time, surrounded by the presence of ancient Egypt, wrapped in its stories, cradled in its eternal rhythms. Sleep well, traveler. Sleep deeply. The journey is complete. The Nile flows on, patient and unchanging forever and ever, and you are safe in its eternal embrace.